Welcome to Heroes and Headlocks, your one-stop shop for all comic, wrestling, and pop culture related information. With your host, Anthony.
Thank you for that lovely introduction, Mr. Man that sounds super familiar. Welcome, everybody. This is episode 7 of Heroes and Headlocks. We've been gone for a week, so I appreciate you guys joining me. Today's going to be a solo venture because guess what? I've been busy and I didn't have time to plan for a guest. So what do you do when you don't have a guest? You improvise, and it is technically a one-person show, and I just like to have guests, so totally makes it okay. So I got to get this out of the way at the beginning, considering how much trouble I got in last time. I want to give out a shout-out to my boy, Brenty Boy. Brent is one of our fellow listeners who will subscribe hopefully after this, but he's listened to a few episodes and I appreciate it, man. Appreciate the commitment to at least checking it out and seeing if you like it. I know it's not really your cup of tea, so thank you. Now on to the important stuff. So there's a lot going on in the world of comics and wrestling and pop culture. So much stuff going on. So we're going to at least go over a few things today, just to get it out of the way, and then make sure to tune in next week. I'm going to have our No Mercy preview show and post show where it's going to have all the results. We're going to be doing another challenge, and we may even have a fourth guest. I do not know. I'm going to attempt to do the first ever fourth person podcast, but that might be a lot. So we'll just see how it goes. Starting off, Batman Dark Knight Metal is freaking awesome, and they have so many different variant covers and different things, and they're really going hard with it. Now the artist, which is Greg Capullo, his style, I talked a little bit about it 2 weeks ago when I had my mother on the podcast. His art style is very, you could tell he's super into metal, so I think it's really cool that the storyline where they're going with the dark multiverse and all the different Batmans and all the different villains. They even have a villain that's a Batman that has doomsday powers, and I was like, that's pretty cool. So I'm picking up, there's a few comics actually coming out this week, so I figured this would be a good time to kind of go over the top 5 comics of the week. So for the week of September 20th, I'll give you a little synopsis on the issue, and we'll kind of go from there. So the number one I think you should check out is called Batman the Red Death. It is actually a tie-in story to, or is it a tie-in? So it is actually I would say a prequel / tie-in to what's going on in the Dark Knight's Metal story right now. That's issue number 1. The writer is Joshua Williamson. Artist is Carmine Di Giandomenico. Try that one. That's a hard one. Cover artist is Jason Fabik. Description reads, as the events of Dark Knight's Metal rock the DC universe, the creatures of the dark multiverse stand ready to invade our world. How can even the world's greatest heroes stop a horde of deadly beings that appear to be powerful, nightmare versions of familiar figures? Find out in these special tie-in issues. Woohoo! So that's the number 1. Number 2, Nightwing, number 29. It's also a metal tie-in. The writer is Tim Seeley. The artist is Paul Pelletier. And cover artist is, oh my god, I think that's Stepan Shedjic. It's a Stjepan. If someone would like to comment how to pronounce that, that would be lovely. A Dark Knight's Metal tie-in, Gotham Resistance Part 2. One vanquished foe gives way to another, even worse threat as this crucial tie-in to DC's Metal continues. Hopelessly lost in a kingdom of snow and ice, our heroes are set upon by Mr. Freeze and his fearsome frost giants from the dark multiverse. That already sounds awesome. But the help arrives in the form of an at-once foreign and familiar Dick Grayson. Ooh. That's fancy. What else we got? Number 3, switching over to the Marvel side, we have Avengers number 11, written by Mark Waid. Artist is Mike Del Mundo. And cover artist is Alex Ross. Secret Empire Aftermath. Not every Avenger came out of the Secret Empire's regime the same as going in. One of Earth's mightiest in particular will either step up to lead the team or retire altogether. artwork on that one looks really cool. I'll post it on our page because the Falcon's wings are kind of encompassing the rest of the team, and I just really like the art style that one particular had. Number 4, Venom 154. The fact that Venom's been going that long, like, good on you, dude. Like, especially for being a villain and having your own comic, that's really awesome. I haven't read it, so I'm kind of excited. I mean, what? No time like the present, right? This one says, let's see, writer is Mike Costa, artist is Paulo Siqueira, and cover artist is Gerardo Sandoval. A first-of-its-kind tale told in the mighty Marvel manner. You've seen things from Eddie Brock's perspective. Now see how things look from the other side. In this, a whole issue from the perspective of the Venom symbiote, which I think is really cool because that's something that's never really touched on, especially the fact that, you know, it is a living organism and all that, and it has its own mind, and it kind of tries to impose its will on whoever the host is at that point. And then number 5, I just really like this comic series, so I think it's a big deal. Go-Go Power Rangers number 3. Writer is Ryan Parrott. Artist is Dan Mora, and cover artist is also Dan Mora. This one, in the wake of their win against the evil space witch Rita Repulsa, the newly formed Power Rangers team tests the limits of their new abilities when morphed. Meanwhile, Rita plots her revenge by uncovering the Rangers' true identities. Now, the thing I really like about the fact that Boom Comics is doing like Power Rangers and things like that is they had started a series, I want to say it was last year, and it was all old school Power Rangers, and I thought that was super neat, and I went out and bought like all the first few issues, and it was really cool. I thought they did a very good job keeping and maintaining the same look and feel, but it was a little edgier. Like even Scorpina was a bigger deal than she should have been, because I think she was like a 1 or 2 off character. She played like Rita's sister or cousin or something along the lines of that. And then she kind of just faded into obscurity. So the fact that they put her in this comic, I was like, that's pretty awesome. Now with the newer one, they just rebooted it like just 2 issues ago, and I think they're going a different direction, especially from the artists and stuff that they had previous. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what they do. And the picture for that one also, I think covers are like my thing. Like I get drawn in by certain covers and how they look. And it's very interesting because, you know, we have some framed in our room. And I remember I picked one. It was Batman issue, I want to say it was 48 before they kind of closed it off. And it was with the like sunflower dude who was like hella creepy. And there's an issue where Batman basically is like in a field of sunflowers and he's got them in his eyes and his mouths and he's pretty much dead. And I thought it was so freaking cool and edgy looking. And Chanel's like, you really want to post that one? And I mean, everybody has their different art styles, but I really thought that was a cool cover. So that's it for our top 5 coming out this week. Definitely pick those up if you plan on it. Now, something I've known about for a while, but I never really thought to do it, is so my great friend Jay Dizzle, who was on episode 2 of our podcast, was bringing up the fact that you can actually do what's called a pull list at different places like Flying Colors and Comics and, you know, different various comic stores, and they'll save it for you for up to 3 months for you to pick it up. And I really need to hop on that because I end up just going there and buying like a shit ton in bulk and hope that they have the ones I'm looking for. And I usually only make it out there maybe once or twice a month, if that. Obviously, comics are expensive, but I do like the whole look and feel of having them, and I think I was really happy that I got the Dark Knight's metal ones before they were gone with the variant covers and things like that. Moving on, Inhumans, man, it just gets worse and worse for that. So there's so much hatred towards that, and they had it in IMAX, and I think it came out like I want to say beginning of August, something like that. And all in all, for its IMAX screenings for the first, I think it was 2 episodes, they made $1.5 million. Now, that may seem like a lot, but going up against the only other time that I can think of recently they did this is when they had Game of Thrones in theaters in IMAX. And that was the season 4 finale, which, mind you, had already been out on TV. So it's like people were rewatching it. They made $1.4 million, and that was in 2015. So you're telling me that a show that already aired got almost as much money as a brand new one. And that's just because a word of mouth of it being so bad was, you know, very transparent. Now I am worried that, I mean, it's Marvel, so they'll recover, but that's like their first big misstep that they've ever had, which is kind of sad considering they were on such a high track record going up until that point. So I'm really hoping that show kind of turns around. The thing with most shows is that the pilot is always the worst. So I don't know why they thought, hey, it sounds like a great idea. Let's go put that pilot on there and before we get the general reaction. Now, I know Inhumans was originally supposed to be a movie, and then they turned it into a TV show after they scrapped it from their like ongoing list of, ever revolving films and all that. So I'm hoping they get a chance to make that slightly better. Or at least, figure out, just regroup, come back together and see if you can do something a little bit better. So, now I'm going to move into the gaming part of all of our hero stuff. My time has been eaten up quite a lot lately by two games in particular, and I hate how much I love them. On my cell phone, I actually downloaded Injustice 2 when it originally came out. I want to say it was like in May, and I've been hooked on that thing. Now with the games nowadays, a lot of the things they do is they have like in-game purchases that you can do for monetary, and then they have like everyday rewards where you log in every day to get a new reward. So I get hooked by that. Now the one I had previously signed up for was the Marvel Contest of Champions, and I was on that like a whole year even before I started the Injustice one. But they've both managed to keep my interest because you unlock new characters, you upgrade them, you make them better, they get better attacks, different things like that. Now, out of the two, I would say that the format for Marvel's a little bit better just because they've had such a long time to kind of perfect it. I think that game's been out at least since 2014, 2015. And I've managed to collect a lot of things. Now, they base it on a scale of 1 star, and I think they just released 6 stars. So 6 stars is the highest, but it's damn near impossible to do half the crap with that in order to get a 6 star. The highest I have right now is a 4 star, and you get them, just by playing the game, and they have different monthly missions and things like that. Last month was all about Spider-Man bad guys. This month is all about Inhumans, so you could get like Medusa in the game, and last month they released like Carnage, which I thought was freaking awesome. So that's cool because they're always trying to get fan input and make it a little bit better. The Injustice one, so they're really smart because they tied it to their console games. So if you play it at least once a day and you play it once a day on your console, you get rewards for each other. So you'll unlock gold or, mother boxes, things like that. So they're really good about making sure you want to play both. Now with Injustice, they actually just released, I think it was 2-3 days ago, they released Black Manta, and he is so cool. I've been waiting for Black Manta ever since they kind of hinted what all the extra DLC characters are. Now, I don't know why I like Black Manta so much, but I think ever since I watched Young Justice, I really liked him, and I just like the fact that he's just a disgruntled dude that hates Atlantis and just wants to kill people, and like his suit looks super dope. So I was really happy they put him in the game. I do think it's funny how many characters, and it didn't really click until I think it was the creator of Injustice and the creator of Mortal Kombat commented about how, there's Black Manta and Black Canary and Black Adam, and then he put Black ... and everybody was like, oh shit, maybe that means Black Lightning's going to be in it. And then so the trailer comes out where it was Black Manta, Hellboy, and Raiden, and everybody was pissed about Raiden. Hellboy was a cool surprise, and it had been rumored for a while, but they never really officially announced it, so that was definitely a nice treat for some people. And then with the Raiden part, they were like, well, okay, you already have Sub-Zero, and he's kind of like your main guy, and you don't really need that when comic book fans are buying this for comic book characters, not for Mortal Kombat characters. So they righted their wrong, and they came out with a premium skin for Black Lightning, and that combo pack with Raiden and him is supposed to come out in October sometime, which is perfect, right around the time for, busting some heads and playing some Halloween gaming. Also, something I thought was really cool is, so I've been keeping up with Dragon Ball Super on Toonami on Saturday nights, and it makes me feel like such a kid, man. Like I haven't had a lot of time because I've been working like 2 jobs, so I usually catch up like first thing in the morning. Like I'll force myself to get up early because I do love to sleep in, so that's always kind of sucky. But I've been getting up every morning and trying to catch up through all the episodes, and I'm trying to just stick with the English dub right now because I know I could go super super far with the Japanese subtitles. The only problem with that is that I know once I get through all those, I'm going to rewatch them. So I might as well just take my time and do it one at a time. So the most recent episode was episode 33, and they had just started the tournament in terms of which team was going to win. And Goku had already defeated the guy that kind of looked like a blown up version of Winnie the Pooh. And he moved on to Frost, which Frost is like the other universe's version of Frieza. And he's like the nicest person in the world. He talks very prim and proper, and I thought it was so funny. I'm like, this dude is killing it. And he's like a humanitarian and shit. I was like, man, Goku would have been so lucky if this was the Frieza in his universe. So that fight was really cool. And the fact that they put 2 fights in one episode always makes me happy because I feel with Dragon Ball Z, it's one of those things that takes like 17 episodes to get one thing done. So Goku versus Frost was awesome. And the fact that Goku lost makes me think there's like some trickery afoot or something, because there's no way he just was like, hey, I'm Super Saiyan, and then I lose. So the next episode I was told that Piccolo's going to face off against Frost. And I think that's great because Piccolo's always been my favorite since the beginning of Dragon Ball. Even when he was a bad guy and he was King Piccolo, and then, Dragon Ball Z started and he was awesome with his special beam cannon. So he's always held a very special place in my heart. Anytime I buy the video games like Xenoverse or Budokai or Tenkaichi, I always do Piccolo, or I always make a Namek if I can create one, just because I love their stretchy arm moves, and they're pretty well balanced, which is neat. So definitely check that out if you haven't already. It's really heating up. I'm glad they finally got past the 2 movies that they were already done. So this is new uncharted territory for me, and that's why I think I'm even more excited. Nextly, Nextly is that Nextly a word? Anyway, nextly, we will be talking about our Headlocks section, which is, as you know, all our wrestling goodies. So there's a lot to talk about in the world of wrestling. It is a good time to be a wrestling fan. I am super happy with everything going on story-wise. There's a little something for everyone. The first thing I would say, Reigns versus Cena is literally proving to be one of the greatest feuds, and I love the amount of shit talk they have both done to each other. And it's everything they're doing is like the internet wrestling community must be losing their mind because they are going hardcore on like themselves. They're like, Reigns will make a jab at Cena for being a part-timer, and Cena will make fun of Reigns because he's a terrible talker, and like they'll just go back and forth. Or Cena said, I've had better matches in the last 6 months than you've ever had in your entire career. And a lot of people can't disagree with that, unfortunately. But it's been cool to see Reigns get flustered, and I'm really hoping Cena wins. I might change my vote depending on how things go in the future, but I think if Cena, the problem is Cena's been advertised to leave and go do his Bumblebee movie and everything. So it makes sense for Reigns to win because he's topping Super Cena. But, it's really hard to say with wrestling because they like to swerve you in one direction and then take you in another direction. But there was also rumors I heard that Undertaker could be coming back and fighting John Cena at Survivor Series, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense considering he, quote-unquote, retired. So why are you going to have him come back and screw John Cena when Reigns is the one that friggin' put him out to pasture? So I don't think that'll happen. But who knows? I could be completely wrong, and that would be like a great surprise for a blow-off pay-per-view like No Mercy. And I recently finished the Mae Young Classic, which was like a 23-woman tournament that they had on the WWE Network. That thing was awesome. Now, I know a lot of people shit on women wrestling, but they had some really good competitors in there. They had Tessa Blanchard, which is Tully Blanchard's granddaughter, I believe. And she was really good, even though she got eliminated in like the first or second round. Now, the finals came down to Shayna Baszler and I think it's Kairi Sane, which you may know Shayna as one of the 4 horsewomen of UFC. And that was along with like Ronda Rousey, and I forget the other 2. But they all were there to cheer on Shayna since she was in the finals. And she is a tough-looking chick. Like, I would not mess with her, and they did a really good job playing like the David Goliath thing for Kyrie, who's a little bit smaller, but she friggin' killed it, and I'm glad she won the tournament, even though I feel having Shayna would have been a good push for, eventually doing what they're planning on coming up with, which is a 4-on-4 Survivor Series match where it's going to be the 4 horsewomen of WWE and the 4 horsewomen of UFC. So I think that'll be really cool, especially if they stick with that plot. They already kind of laid the seeds down by having Rousey appear on the Mae Young Classic in like a backstage segment, which it was very brief, but you could tell they were kind of gearing up for things. Something that's a little bit on the sad side is Bobby the Brain Heenan died yesterday or Sunday morning, and he was 73. So that kind of is depressing, especially since Bobby the Brain's been a big part of wrestling ever since the 80s. And, you know, he was one of those larger-than-life heels that was just good at busting your chops and making you pissed at, like, the littlest things. So that was really sad. He was a big part of wrestling, and I know a lot of people are kind of, like, that was one of those straws that it's just one of the last straws that they take, and you're like, man, that really sucks. So, you know, my heart goes out to his family, and I know the wrestling community is really good about paying homage to each other and, you know, making sure the family is taken care of and different things like that. Speaking of Bobby's fun transition, Bobby Roode is one of those guys who I feel they are going to give the royal treatment to. And believe me, I think it's well deserved. I don't know if I talked about it on here yet, but he's been so far labeled as a babyface, which I think is interesting because in NXT he was straight up heel, and he was great at it because he's such a cocky, arrogant dude, and especially with that song Glorious, it's like, how could you not be? So I think it'll be interesting if they keep him that way. I hope they keep him a babyface just because I like cheering for him and I can buy a Glorious shirt. I recently got 2 shirts for my birthday from my friend Vinny, who was on the podcast a few weeks ago from Guardians of Discourse. And he bought me a Jeff and Matt Hardy shirt, and he got me a Nakamura shirt, which is great because I'm totally digging all of those guys right now. So you'll definitely be seeing me on one of those, or in one of those for the podcast this weekend. Now with Bobby Roode, he's supposed to feud with Ziggler. Now, Ziggler's kind of in a weird spot, and I feel really bad for him. He's coming to the end of his contract, I believe, which is going to either be in October or November. So I think this is kind of like his swan song, unfortunately. I've been feeling sad for him for years because he's such a good wrestler, such a good talker, such a great persona, and he just never gets anywhere. He's like one of those people that you root for, and unfortunately, for whatever reason, they just don't click, and management doesn't give him a chance. It doesn't push him. And I think that's been the case ever since he got injured after he and Alberto Del Rio fought. And that was a while ago. That was at least like 3-4 years ago. And he won the title the night after WrestleMania in a rematch where Alberto was facing Jack Swagger. And then he got a concussion like a month later, and they flipped it. So Alberto was the heel. So that was interesting. His current gimmick that he's doing is mocking other people's gimmicks, which sounds weird. And apparently they've done that in the past, but I don't think it's that successful because you're basically saying like, I don't have my own identity. I just think everybody else's identity is crap, which isn't great, but maybe Ziggler can make it work. Who knows? He so far has done people like the McMahon entrance, and he did one like Naomi's. So he's just trying to get under people's skin. So I hope they do him good. Now, the whole part of this feud is that Bobby Roode has this glorious entrance with the music and the rotating thing where he stands on in the light. So his is just super fun, and everybody loves Glorious. Like, that's such a great theme song. So Ziggler's being jealous of the treatment that Bobby Roode's getting is a believable story, but they haven't really pushed it too much because they've kept him off TV with like a slow burn. So I'm hoping by the time that Hell in a Cell rolls around, you'll get a Ziggler versus Bobby Roode feud. So something else that strikes me as curious is Enzo Amore has arrived on the cruiserweight scene, which I think is great for the cruiserweights, especially because they got stale real quick and really sadly. They have so much talent, but it seems like they're kind of an afterthought. They finally did get rid of the thing where they switched the ropes out and everything, which I'm sure Sam Roberts is happy about because that was always his main gripe. But they haven't really done a good job of building any stars. Now, Neville is my boy. Neville will always be my boy. He's held the cruiserweight division in place. Now, he is the cornerstone. He's the guy to beat. Like, he's 2-time champion. He only lost for like a day difference. So he's he's great. I think if there's going to be anybody who can kind of give him a run for his money, it would be Enzo. And that's not saying too much considering Enzo is a terrible wrestler, but he's a great talker. And I think that's kind of also what they miss in the cruiserweight division is everybody's really good wrestler, but not a great talker. And I think that just goes to show you that as much as you may want a wrestler to succeed on just wrestling skills alone, probably not going to happen. Now, the only exception in that would be AJ Styles. And I don't know if that has a lot to do with the fact that he is such a high-profile wrestler or he built his indie career. But a lot of these guys have been on the indies, so it doesn't really make sense why he would be the only popular one. Now, Neville, obviously, he came from Japan and when he was Pac and things like that, and he tore it up over there, and he was very highly regarded. So when he came here, it was kind of like a downgrade, but he stayed at NXT for like 2-3 years, came up to the main roster, and then he got the shit treatment where he was losing like every match, and they dressed him in a cape, and they wanted him to be Mighty Mouse. So it just goes to show you it has a lot to do with you could be popular everywhere else in the world, but if the WWE doesn't know you and know how to utilize you, you're going to go down to shit ski. So Enzo getting involved with The Miz I thought was interesting too, especially for a one-off thing where The Miz was announcing that him and Maurice were going to have a baby. So that didn't really make any sense to me, and I know they like trying to keep everybody together or they like to keep everybody separate where you have the cruiserweight separately and the main roster, and they're kind of starting to slowly blend them together, but it's not as quick as one would like. Braun versus Lesnar is going to be a murder house. I'm so excited. Braun is who I wanted to win the Fatal 4-Way last month at SummerSlam, and I was so close to picking him, but I had a feeling Lesnar was going to retain. So I'm glad I picked Lesnar because I did not want that hot sauce. So that'll be a really good match, and I'm excited for the fact that Braun has been one of the better parts of Raw for definitely the last like 6-7 months, and especially for a big dude who gave Big Show his like swan song where he went out, at least I'm assuming so, from the steel cage match and everything like that. It just seems like Braun's in a great position. He's gonna win that title eventually. Like, you can't keep it away from him. That dude deserves it after like gaining such a following, and even though he's a bad guy, he gets the loudest cheers, which is so funny. But at the same time, I don't know if Lesnar's ready to give it up. If he is, that would be cool to have Braun kind of being what they call him, the monster among men, and now he'll be on top of the mountain too. Something else I'm really excited about is this is our second or third week having Shelton Benjamin back, and man, what a blast from the past that is. I was just talking to my coworker today about it, and how some of my favorite matches back in like the early 2000s were like Shelton Benjamin versus Shawn Michaels, or Shelton Benjamin versus Mysterio, or him versus Triple H. Like, they did a really good job building him as like an underdog who was super athletic, and they would put on these amazing matches. But my favorite part was it was him and HBK, and it looked like Benjamin was going to go for a springboard. So he jumps off the ropes and gets hit right in the face with sweet chin music. It could have not been any more like technically sound than it was, and I was so impressed. So I've always been a Shelton Benjamin fan, even when he went through the golden standard thing where he dyed his hair. Probably not one of his finer times, but I know he was supposed to come back originally last year, and that didn't happen because he had like a torn rotator cuff or something, and he hadn't actually signed the WWE deal. So even though they hyped him up, he just never went. So it's kind of nice that he's there now, and they partnered him with Gable, which I think is interesting, especially since Jordan kind of just up and went to Raw and is doing a singles thing. But I feel like Gable could have done a singles career too. So, I mean, maybe they were like, he's not ready, even though he was putting on some wrestling clinics against like AJ Styles or Kevin Owens or Jinder Mahal, different stuff like that. Now, I did have one thing spoiled for me. It is Monday, so I am recording this at night. So I had something spoiled for me on Raw. Originally, I had this whole thing I was going to talk about with the women Fatal 4-Way, where you have Nia Jax and Emma and Alexa and Sasha. And up until 20, 30 minutes ago, I for sure thought that Nia was going to walk out. Now it's a little bit more complicated because I just found out Bayley's going to be coming back, and she's going to be in a Fatal 5-Way now. So that kind of makes me wonder what direction they're going to go in. There's a lot of components in here, which I think make it such an interesting match. And that's how I kind of felt when they had the Fatal 4-Way between all the big dudes at SummerSlam. Now, you can make a case for every one of these wrestlers. Sasha, like Sasha's great. She's been consistently great ever since coming to the main roster, but her pushes are like friggin' bus stops. Like, they are start and stop. Like, it's really bad. They give her the title and they rip it away from her the next week, and then she's out with a concussion for a week, or she hurts her hip or whatever it is, but she's like always on and off. So the fact they gave her the title one week and then Alexa steals it back the next, I was like, oh crap. Alexa is my favorite female wrestler, and I unfortunately don't think she's going to walk out with the title. She's already a 2-time Raw Women's Champion, 1-time SmackDown Women's Champion. Actually, she may even be a 2-time SmackDown Women's Champion. I don't remember. Holy crap, she was, because she won it back from Naomi. I remember that. So she's won it twice on both brands, so I don't think she's going to walk out of No Mercy with it. My money was originally on Nia Jax because she's such a destructive force. And she's been due for a while, too, where she's been just clearing everybody out. And the only people that have beat her are the people that are in the Fatal 5-Way, and they've only beat her like once. Emma has done such a great job because she was in Shitsville for so long. Like, she was losing every match, and she had such a following online, and she was promoting to give Emma a chance. So there is a case for her to win. I don't think she'll win because, they just want to... they just like toying with her life, unfortunately. And, she's an interesting case because I was a really big fan of the first Emma gimmick where she was just weird and awkward and like love bubbles and stuff. And it was great in NXT, but it did not translate well to Raw and SmackDown. So I think that's why they changed her character. And she was going to do the Emelina thing, and then that ended up not working out. So she's been as much start and stop as you could probably say Sasha has, only Sasha's been way more successful. And then that brings us to Bayley. Bayley's had a rough road too. This is kind of like her redemption stage, and I hope that out of this, since she's coming back, that'll then set up the Sasha Bayley feud that they were trying to do probably originally at SummerSlam when it got all screwed up. So this is a nice chance for redemption. I think Bayley has a hard road ahead of her too, just because her gimmick has kind of fallen flat recently. Now, Cena's one of those people that he could be a good guy forever. He's still going to get crap, but he's going to stick to his guns. For Bayley, I don't think she's that well loved yet. And I mean, she is loved. Like, she's done great matches in NXT. She had match of the year with her and Sasha when they headlined Brooklyn for NXT. So she's done good things, but overall, same thing. Like, she went to the main roster, she seemed like she was doing good, and then she kind of fell off. And especially with the stops and goes with her getting injured too. So there's so many different components, and injuries really do screw things up. I mean, even just to kind of go off subject for a second, I played fantasy football this weekend, and my opponent lost 3 or 4 players to like broken hands, broken feet, concussions, like all within like a 2 to 3 hour period. And it's just so unpredictable. You have these giant sports athletes that are paid tons of money. Bad things happen. Mistakes are made. You just got to move forward and hope that you can recover and get back to where you got originally. Nakamura. Mr. Shinsuke Nakamura. The thing with Shinsuke is he's had quite a run lately. He has beaten John Cena, and that was an awesome match, even though his move that he did where he flung him on his head looked really painful. And then he had a great match with Randy Orton like 2 weeks ago, and I was super impressed by that too. Orton, as much as people give him crap, I still think he's a great wrestler, and I think that he complements other wrestlers well when he's in it. When you can tell when he's in it to win in and when he's not. In that Nakamura match, they were both in it. And it was for a chance to face Jinder at Hell in a Cell. So, my question would be, are they going to fight in a Hell in a Cell? And is that going to take away the Singh brother element? And then you're just going to have Nakamura versus Jinder, hopefully for the last time, and then give Nakamura the title already. The fact you didn't give it to him at SummerSlam, and it was literally the same match as the Orton matches. Like the same finish. Like, let me beat up the Singh brothers. And then right afterwards, oh, loss. And that was sad because that was the most underwhelming match on that card. And, Matt and Vinny for sure were like, oh yeah, Nakamura's got this. This time around, I'm putting the faith in the boy. I think he'll do it. I hope so, for everybody's sake, because I think the gender experiment is wearing thin. And then our boy Kevin Owens. Oh, he's had such a good career. I don't know how he got so lucky, or he must just be like on it or something. But he is so highly regarded in the locker room, and the fact that they've given him all these high profile things to do. So let's lay it down for you. He arrives in NXT. He wins his first match. His next match after that, title match against Sami Zayn. Then he's a super long running champion in NXT. Goes up to the main roster, beats John Cena in his first match ever, multiple times, mind you. And then he wins the Intercontinental United States. He's the world champion. And now he's in a high-profile feud with Shane McMahon. Like, that dude has had a dream career. And I wish Sami Zayn would have had it, but Sami Zayn's not a bad guy. And apparently only bad guys get the awesome things. But yeah, his match with Shane is going to be great. The fact that Vince was on TV this week, and so many people are mad because they think he was blading. And for any of you that don't know what blading is, it's when you cut your own head and then you put this gel over it so it stops the bleeding temporarily. But so Kevin Owens goes to headbutt Vince McMahon, and he just starts gushing blood from his head. And you're like, no way. Like, I've never been hit by a headbutt. I mean, not that I've been headbutted that many times, but I've never been like, oh shit, I'm bleeding. So it's either that or he's just old and needs to stay off TV. But it seemed too perfect. Like, how would he know that a headbutt was going to draw blood? And I was reading an article saying that the last person that actually attempted blading was Batista, and that was like back in 2007, I think. And he got fined $100,000 by Vince McMahon for that. So they take that very seriously. And, they've been trying to move away from having all the bloodshed and all this stuff like that. But the segment was great. I think Shane is going to have a lot of built-up energy towards this fight, which is going to make it really good. Now, obviously, when like AJ Styles and Shane fought, it was cool, but I felt like there wasn't a lot of heat behind them other than AJ threw Shane through like a car window, which was great, but it didn't really have a lot of the sustenance that this Kevin Owens has, because as much as I love AJ, Kevin is such a more hateable bad guy. I don't know a single person, at least around me, that likes Kevin Owens except for me. And me, I like him mostly because I think he adds an element where you want him to lose. And I think that's good for the wrestling business, because you got to have people that really upset you and make you want them to lose, so you're always watching to tune in to see what's going to happen. So for that, they've created a great character in Kevin Owens. Something else I'm excited about that's hopefully going to be coming soon is Asuka's starting to get some like promotional teasers for her showing up, and I read something that's saying she was going to come to the main roster probably in October, so more in time for like TLC, but that'll be great. And I think she's going to show up on Raw, especially since you've pretty much run out of matches after this Fatal 5-Way to do for Raw. So hopefully they use her well, because she's still undefeated. She just passed like Goldberg's streak, and I think she's probably on like the second or third longest streak in WWE history. So that'll be cool for undefeated wise. Speaking of undefeated, what about some undisputed? The team of Adam Cole, Kyle O'Reilly, and Bobby Fish is actually been named the Undisputed Era. Now, I didn't get much of a chance to talk about NXT TakeOver when we did the SummerSlam Spectacular, just because I hadn't seen it, because I was trying to fit in a lot in one day. So I have seen it since then, and I love that pay-per-view. It was so good. Was it better than SummerSlam? I would probably say yes, just because it was a little bit more digestible, too, since it was shorter. It was only 2 hours versus, there's 6 hours of frickin' SummerSlam. Oh my god, we were all so tired after that. But yeah, it was a great pay-per-view. I'm so glad Adam Cole is in WWE now. I used to watch him back when Ring of Honor was huge, and everyone's like, Adam Cole, baby! And he is like a super kick genius. And everyone would, instead of shouting like goal, they'd shout goal. So that was pretty great. And then I love Red Dragon, which is your combination of Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish. They have been a really big cornerstone of like either New Japan or Ring of Honor as well. So to see them all three in a stable is really awesome. And the fact they call it the Undisputed Era, I mean, it's not the greatest name, but as long as they win matches, I don't really have a problem with it because then that kind of makes them undisputed, right? So I was looking at YouTube today and I saw that they released the new trailer for 2K18 for the gameplay for wrestling, and that looks so fun. I'm so excited to get my hands on it. The fact that if you pre-order it, you get it like 4 days early too is even more enticing because I just love premium, stuff where nobody else has it, even though I'm sure a whole bunch of people are going to buy it. The graphics look really good. They've toned things down so everything's a lot darker, it looks like. And it looks like they added a lot more modes where you can jump off stuff in like a parking lot brawl, which I think they took away last year, and they only had like a hallway office brawl, which was okay, but you could only do like 4 moves. So hopefully this definitely beats the pants off of last year. And the roster they have is so dense. You have so many people from NXT in it, which I think is really cool. And I feel like last year Nakamura was more of an afterthought because he was a DLC character. Now he's in the game. He's got his fancy outfit. I think it'll be great. And recently we got some new tag champs. I didn't know if anybody was watching SmackDown, but New Day won their titles back at the Vegas episode of the Super SmackDown Live Vegas episode. And I think that's great. I love the New Day. I'm really kind of avenged. I think I'm done with the feud with them and the Usos. I mean, I was done before, but now I'm like really done. There should be that rule that I think they used to have where you couldn't switch titles back and forth. Like I think it was if there was a champion, somebody beat him, that guy beat him again, then there was no more matches. Like you couldn't rebuttal it. Because at some point you have to just put a cap on it, man. Like, Jesus. Something that's cool but also kind of sad at the same time. Nikki Bella announced that she was going to be on Dancing with the Stars a few weeks ago. And I was thinking, what day does Dancing with the Stars come on? And what do you know? It comes on Monday, so it's going to be direct competition with Monday Night Raw. Nikki's so great. I hope she does good on that show. Her partner is Artem, and he had some crazy last name, so I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. But he's a veteran on that show from what I've been told, and I think she'll do good. She's super athletic. Now, speaking of mobile games, something else I should have probably touched on the other section, but it wasn't a comic book related thing, is the wrestling mobile apps they've come out with lately have been really good. Now, the original one I played was the Immortal or WWE Immortals, where they were like superhero versions of wrestlers, and that game was super fun. Then they came out with WWE Super Cards, and that was like a trading card one where you battle them, and that was super cool. And the most recent one they came out with is called Tap Mania, and I've never really played a tap game before. People say they're pretty addictive, but I didn't even really know what a tap game was. And then I found out it's literally just tap forever. And that game has taken up a lot of my time too, because again, they do the same thing where you have to get different daily rewards, and they'll give you different wrestlers, and my team right now is doing pretty good. Basically it's a 5-on-1 match where you get 4 people plus the character you create, and then you face wrestlers and you fight them in groups of 10. So after that group of 10, you face the boss. And after the boss, then you move on to the next rung, so on and so forth. And it literally goes forever. Now, as you get in the higher levels, it gets harder and harder and harder. And you have to either restart it in Prestige, which gives you more bonus attack, and then you can go back in and keep going. So far, the highest I've gotten was level 700. And they make it really hard to keep progressing because they'll come out with every other day like daily challenges where you can enter the Women's Revolution or the Monday Night Raw event, and then if you place high enough in those, you unlock certain characters and get different rewards. So that keeps me super busy, and a lot of the time the nice thing with that game is I don't even have to look at it. I could just like tap my fingers on it and do something else. So but I think at this point I realize I'm addicted to mobile games, which is kind of depressing. And then that's pretty much it for wrestling. the last thing I'll probably go over on this short episode today is our pop culture section, which usually I try to just blend in everything else, but I'm giving it its own category because it deserves it. So, the big deal over the last few weeks has been It. And I'm not saying oh, I'm not going to tell you what I'm talking about. No, it's It. The movie is friggin' fantastic. I saw it in theater with my mom, my grandma-in-law, and my aunt-in-law, I guess. Yeah, I guess those would be accurate terms. And we weren't as scared as much as we should have been, but it was a fantastic movie. It is very much a mixture of Stranger Things and Super 8 and E.T. Like, it's a blend of all of those together. Even one of the actors from Stranger Things, Finn Wolfhard, he's in it, and he plays great as Richie. And Richie was originally played, I want to say it was by Seth Green in the original movie that Stephen King did. And I didn't realize Bill Skarsgård was Alexander Skarsgård's brother. And you may know Alexander Skarsgård from True Blood, where he played Eric. But now I kind of see the resemblance. They both have like very similar faces, only I would say that Bill is a lot creepier. But so we see the movie, and spoiler alert, I guess it's not really a spoiler because the book's been out since the 80s and the movie's been out since the 90s. So we'll just say that it's spoiler free. But yeah, it was really well done. I feel that it just made me want part 2 like immediately, and part 2 is not even going to come out to 2019. So they did a very good job of building a story by itself for part 1, where like technically if you never saw part 2, you would be okay just watching part 1. And the actors they chose were great. Now, I've heard a lot of rumblings for who they want to play. The kids actually picked for who they want to play as the older versions, and some of the names thrown out there have been Chris Pratt and Bill Hader and Jessica Chastain, and I think I even heard Christian Bale or a few different people like that. But it was a star-studded cast. So if it actually turns out that way, Part 2 might even be better than Part 1. But they had some really creepy scares. Now, I'm not horrified by clowns or anything, so it didn't freak me out much on that level, but just some of the like jump scares and things, and you knew they were going to come because it was almost formulaic at certain points, but they still did a really good job of throwing you off of where it was going to come from. There was a lot of key differences from the original movie, where obviously this version was a lot creepier. But overall, it maintained a lot of the youthfulness from the kids' perspective. And I feel like anytime they do these things where it's focused on kids, you want it to feel, their struggle of growing up and being a kid and things like that. And they really reflected that well in this movie. And the parents all seem like just douchebags, like every single one of them, which is really funny. And the kids are just great. Now, the one thing out of that movie that did freak me out is they have this scene where he brings Beverly down into the sewer and he just starts dancing, and it is like freaking me out because like I don't know if you've seen movies or things where everything's kind of wompy, where it's like in the Matrix, like when they would touch the television screen and it would go wonk, wonk, wonk. So it was like that, and it makes you feel like you're on a bad trip or something. Like it's freaking weird. And then come to find out they have a whole bunch of memes online where they say Pennywise can dance to anything, and I'll include the link down below so you guys can look at that. But there is some funny ones that I would have never thought of. Like, they have him dancing to All Star by Smash Mouth, and that one cracked me up. There was definitely some good ones on that. Overall, I'd give the movie I'd say a B or a B+. Like, I really enjoyed it. I probably will buy it even. And I'm looking forward to part 2. Something else that made headlines is Colin Trevorrow, who was in line to direct the last Star Wars. He's the one that actually directed episode 8. So he's supposed to do episode 9 as 2, and he stepped down just like a few weeks ago. And lo and behold, guess who they replace him with? Your boy J.J. Abrams. And I think that's great. I loved what he did with episode 7. It was such a magical experience. Something that I thought was crazy and I didn't know is that it's the third highest grossing movie of all time is episode 8 or episode 7. So I think that's super cool. He's coming back for the last one. Something that's weird about that is that they actually have a petition floating around online trying to get him kicked off the movie. And and my thought process is, let me get this straight. You guys all loved what he did with episode 7, but you don't want him to do episode 9. That just doesn't make any sense to me. And then I read a little quote from him, and I guess I understand his point. So the petitioner, his name's Matt Vella, he argues Abrams' direction of The Force Awakens resulted in a film that was too similar to Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope. There was virtually no creativity, he writes, and no risks taken. With that, I would say, yeah, I agree that he didn't take a lot of risks, but he didn't really need to. It was a continuation story, and they made it way different still. Like, even though it had elements that were of A New Hope, it was a nostalgic experience. Everything from start to finish of that film felt familiar and real, but not in a recycled way which would make me upset. It just made me happy. Like, I was like, this is like my childhood. So I think it's great that J.J. Abrams is going to come back and do the last one. I'm kind of surprised he didn't do all 3 to begin with, but I don't know if that, different decisions for different directors and things like that. I think it's weird Colin Trevorrow bowed out, and this is the same director, I don't know if you guys know, who did Safety Not Guaranteed and Jurassic World. So Jurassic World was a huge movie, and that movie it's the same thing. If you think about it, it was Jurassic Park, but a recycled plot, and everybody still loved it because it made everybody feel nostalgic. So you really can't get mad at directors for that, especially if they pull it off and it makes a crap ton of money like both of those movies did. But whatever happens with it, I'm just glad that we're still getting the movies, and that the unfortunate passing of Carrie Fisher didn't affect things too badly. And I mean, that's sad to say, because I don't want to seem selfish, like, oh, it still needs to get made even if she dies. But I know she was such a big part of it, and it just is tragic when, you have these people that are such big icons and then they pass away. So I'm glad that, they're still going on with Star Wars, and they're going to probably figure out a really cool way to do a tribute in it and stuff like that. Lastly, I just want to really thank you guys for hanging out with me and letting me spew my bullshit for an hour. Most of it, I'm just trying to give you guys the updates, and, if it's information you've heard, cool. If it hasn't, then, that makes my job even better. The fact I get to teach you guys some interesting stuff. So I appreciate you guys following me, and stick around. We're going to try to do some bigger, better things, do some contests. I'm going to hopefully start a video podcast with my wife, Chanel, just going on crazy adventures and taping it and seeing how that goes. I really like the whole format of carpool karaoke, so I'm sure we'll tie that in. I got a box opening coming out pretty soon for DC's Most Wanted, and that one showed up like 2 weeks late, so I apologize for the delay since that came out like on September 1st, but we'll get that out to you in the next few days, and then look for our No Mercy pay-per-view show, and then, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for listening to Heroes in Headlocks. Join us next week, and as always, be sure to follow us on Podian.co, YouTube, and Facebook.
Don't forget to like us on Facebook and subscribe on our YouTube.